Now, the Banking Risk Information Centre, Sabric, has released its annual crime stats report. It suggests digital banking is a lot safer than in-person banking. Of course, that doesn't mean that online scammers are resting on their laurels. In fact, their techniques are always changing and getting more and more sophisticated, which may explain that while there was a decrease in digital fraud incidents, there was a 45% increase in the total losses incurred in the 2020 to 21 period. Let's get a better understanding of this now. And I'm joined by Nischal Mewalall, who is the CEO of Sabric. Nischal, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Okay, so less digital banking fraud incidents, but bigger overall losses. Am I correct there?
That's correct. And good evening, Sally, and to the viewers. You're absolutely spot on. So what we have seen is an 18% decrease in the digital crime incidents. However, when the criminals are successful, certainly they're making away with a far bigger loot. So we've seen a 45% increase in the gross losses. Customers have lost around 438 million rand itself.
So that's a lot of money. Is it a lot higher than previous years' losses?
Yes, certainly it's a lot higher. Like I said, a 45% increase in the loss. What we can observe from this is that the product itself is safer. So when you go online and whether you transact on the internet via your phone or whether you're doing it on the computer itself, the product is safe. The controls certainly detect and prevent. So the safeguards work. Some customers are even able to identify who they're paying. However, when these criminals are successful, certainly they go in for the big score.
You've also issued a specific warning about online shopping. Tell us why.
Yeah. So the concern we have with online shopping, especially now as we head into the festive season, when we are certainly seeing an uptake in the number of transactions, and then Black Friday around the corner, the key issue has got to be websites that look like the genuine thing, but actually they're counterfeit. And these websites are in the process of harvesting your information. In certain instances, they actually proceed with a transaction and deliver you inferior product or goods. So certainly we're signaling that you need to watch out, pay careful attention to what websites you're actually on and where you're shopping, because certainly there's a few of them out there that are designed purely to be information harvesters.
So how do you check? How do you make sure that the website you're on that is offering you a tantalizing deal is legit? What do you do?
Yeah, well, I suppose the first thing, in using your words, the first thing you've got to realize is that looking at these deals that come up, often if the deal is too good to be true, the chances are it's not a real thing. But also you need to pay attention to the website itself. Go in and look at the details around, the headers in the websites. What does it contain? You've got to watch out for whether when you are transacting and, you're punching in your details, whether that's a secure channel or a secure pipe, you've got to look for the type of payment mechanism that they're using itself. Is it the bank that is directly switching the transaction, or they're using third parties who are catching your data? So there's quite a number of things you've got to watch out for in order to ensure you're transacting safely.
What are the techniques that are being used? I mean, you spoke earlier about that there are fewer incidents, but there's bigger hauls that the fraudsters are getting. So is it mostly through online shopping, or are there other avenues where they're just getting huge amounts of money? What are the techniques?
Sally, look, the most common one, and we've spoken about this many times before, it's got to be the technique of phishing, vishing, or smishing. I mean, this is the most common method that is used in order to mislead you and I, in order to hand over some of our personal information. And often the most popular one now has got to be them calling you or purporting to be a bank and offering you assistance to reverse a transaction that they suspect is fraud. I must tell you, I've listened to some of these recordings, and they are really, really good. It's so hard to spot a fake from the genuine one, but that's the most common one at the moment. And then the other one has got to be, we very often share some of our data as we interact online. We agree to things when we accept cookies and things of that nature. So we need to start paying attention to what we allow our data to be used for. Often our data is harvested and unsold, and we actually don't know this. And then that leads to data leaks, and then we've got bigger problems. So certainly phishing, vishing, and smishing, that's the number one lookout.
So when you're saying that our data is being harvested, you know, when you go onto almost any website these days, they say, hey, we're using cookies, do you accept this? And, you know, we all get irritated with then having to go through all their protocols. And I mean, honestly, most of the time I just say, yeah, whatever. Is that dangerous to be clicking, yes, that's fine? What should I be doing differently?
Well, you should be firstly considering where you're going and what you're doing online. If you are going to be asked to punch in your personal information upon the entrance of the site, so you know sometimes they want details such as your name, your address, or they may even ask you some of your personal identification information as part of creating a member profile for you. So you need to really think about whether you want to proceed with such an engagement or whether you want to allow a website to host such information of that nature for you. Because at the end of the day, when you click yes, the chances are they've already solicited permission to unsell your data. So really think twice when you go onto these sites that are requiring you to register yourself prior to allowing you to do very basic checks on a website.
A sort of interesting fact from the report, and that is for the first time, Sabric stats show vehicle and asset application fraud increases over 50%. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so this is a new aspect of our statistical collection that we're making known to public, which looks at statistical numbers in relation to application fraud. And application fraud is, like we pointed out, when somebody wants to buy a vehicle or any form of asset, you know, a plane, cars, helicopters, boats, whatever you may want to consider your fancy, certainly the banks are able to finance such transactions. And then there's another part to this, and that is when you go about opening up your check accounts, credit accounts. So we break these things down into two different types of application frauds. And in the vehicle and asset finance space, we saw more than 20,000 incidents in 2021, and that's a 53% increase. It's quite staggering. You know, the potential losses that sat at those applications were 7.3 billion. And then on the other hand, when it looks at accounts, there were just over 10,000 incidents. But that showed a 44% decrease. And what that tells you between those two applications is that our ability to identify counterfeit information and documents are quite good, and we can prevent such incidents from taking place.
All right, so all told, with all this information from Sabric's latest crime stats report looking at digital banking, are banks winning or losing the war on digital fraudsters? Because the haul is increasing, even though the incidents have reduced, but they're getting more money from us than ever before. Is it the banks losing the war, or consumers just not getting with the program and wising up?
You see, Sally, the consumers are certainly getting wiser. I mean, that's the reason why we see a decrease in the number of incidents. The banks certainly, in terms of the product design and the safety mechanisms that they produce, well, certainly they're some of the best in the world. The aspect that we begin to lose is when we are unsuccessful in being able to prosecute the matters where there is evidence and where the evidence can be found within the Republic itself. We are unable to assemble the data that is required in order to prosecute these individuals. So there is more work that needs to be done from the banks, including the Sabric side, and certainly, specifically when it comes to phishing, vishing, and smishing, it's working with other organizations like Sabric and the mobile service providers in order to look at what type of solutions we can put in place that cut across industries and platforms so that we are able to generate better measures to strengthen the combating of this type of crime. So it doesn't come down to the consumer or the bank, it comes down to collaboration to combat the crime.
And in the meantime, I will just stay deeply suspicious of any online banking, anything I do online. I think that's the best way. Check. Everything you're doing online is legit, as you say. Such sophistication now being employed to fool us. Thank you so much, South African Banking Risk Information Centre CEO Nischal Mewalall.